Hello and welcome. I am very excited to introduce today's master, Harrison Klein. Harrison has been a teacher, marketing director, and entrepreneur since 1992. He has led teams as president and CEO of 5 businesses, all specializing in transformations and the awakening processes. Harrison's message is the continuous unfoldment of unconditional love through consciousness elevations, and he has developed multiple applications and teaching techniques designed to stimulate intellectual and cellular integration, internalization, and transcendence. Harrison is an active coach, and his 3-course series entitled The Alignment Factor, Effortless Abundance, and Mastery are designed to bring the subconscious, conscious, and superconscious into perfect alignment, thus ending stress, increasing awareness, and making manifestation and life easy, natural, and effortless due to the congruency of our internal state of mind, spirit, and being. If you are finally ready for long-term happiness, financial security, time for all of your favorite activities and traveling, or even comfortable retirement, then this is the call you've been waiting for. Because tonight, Harrison is going to share the 2 most powerful words on the planet that are the direct access and gateway to your full awakening. Also, how to use the images of your mind to create your reality, and how your beingness and knowingness within you can allow you to effortlessly sidestep all fear and struggle. Today you will walk away from this discussion one step closer to remembering your magnificence and knowing that you can actualize your divine potential and create the life of your dreams. Wow, Harrison, I am very excited for this call. Thanks so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Julie. It's an awesome thing to be able to connect with people to help them in the process of their own consciousness elevation and their own ability to be in the world in a wonderful way. I love the concept of this whole series of being in an awakening. So it's really an awesome place to be, and I just really appreciate you and Lance for putting this together. So it takes a lot, I know.
Well, thank you, and it would be nothing without having phenomenal people to contribute, such as yourself. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure.
First of all, I am excited about this call because personally from Lance, he's just been telling me that you have actually coached him in the laws of being, and he said that it was some of the most powerful and immediately usable information that he's ever applied. So just to get started, would you like to share the story of how you found your calling in this field?
Yeah. Really, the bottom line is that I made a huge transformation in my life, and it wasn't really my transformation, but it gave me the tools to go ahead and help other people in their transformation. Transformation that I made was that I was someone who was born of Holocaust parents, who had suffered amazing indignities during World War II. They went through the process of all this torture and sacrifice and pain and difficulty for no reason, no logical reason whatsoever, and ultimately because of the experiences they had in their younger years while they were in the midst of all this inhumanity, both my father and mother were pretty much broken spirits. They were depressed, they were angry, they were full of misperceptions. They lived in a state of scarcity. They lived in a state of fear. They lived in a state of survival mechanisms, a fight or flight kicking in at all times. And so, in the environment of that I inherited as I came onto this planet, basically, it was too much for me, being a sensitive young kid and being very kind of involved in trying to make my way and navigate through the confusion of all that. I ended up giving up and going into a state of darkness and just retreating from the world, not wanting to live, and getting into a place of what would be now considered the symptoms of Asperger's disease. I was fragmented. I was in denial. I was hardly able to speak or carry on a conversation until I was 30 years old. I was just so dynamically constricted and contracted that I couldn't really make eye contact with anybody. I had what Eckhart Tolle calls a pain body, which means that whenever anybody came within about 6 feet of me, 6 to 9 feet of me, I immediately felt pain. I was in a constant state of hurt and disappointment and frustration and anger, and I couldn't even get into the here and now if my life depended on it. I couldn't hear what people were saying. All I ever got was small fragments of their communication to me, and most of the conversations I had till the time I was 30 really had to do with transactional things such as, how much is this and what do I have to do? And the rest of the time I was just in this state of darkness and blackness and kind of ambulatorily making my way through life, and the only vicarious places where I was able to pay attention at all about anything was really reading or movies. So because they were inanimate objects and I didn't have to deal with their energy, although they're animate objects, but I didn't have to deal with their energy, and I could glean information from something that wasn't moving. So under those circumstances, that was the only place I lived vicariously. I was a pretty good student because of the younger years that I had as a child, but in the expression of my ability to live my life, I was an utter and complete failure and in darkness and in negativity and denial on a 24/7 basis for about 30 years. So I was about 30 years old. So one day I was sitting in my apartment and I was alone, and it was late in the evening, and I was sort of doing what I don't normally do, which was I was sort of concentrating on something, and without warning I experienced what most people would call a mystical experience, and the term for it in spiritual lingo these days is a white light experience, although at the time I had no idea what it was. But the universe sort of zapped me like a bolt of lightning from nowhere. I was zapped into this white light, yanked from my body, sent into a spinning vortex of white light. I was traveling at a velocity unheard of, unbelievable to me. I was being bombarded by colors and patterns and words and music and all kinds of things coming at me at this phenomenal rate, and I was simply like Superman going faster than the speed of light in this vortex of white light and energy and colors and patterns and sounds, and I had no idea what it was. I could have been in it 2 minutes, could have been in it 20 minutes, who knows. It was there's a collapse of time, and I was just moving at a velocity unheard of to me and unknown to me. And when I was deposited back in my body, a magic transformation had happened. It was a state of grace, and suddenly all the symptoms of Asperger's were gone. Suddenly I was at a place of high perceptual awareness. Suddenly I was in a place of vivid reality. I could hear, I could see, I could speak, I could entertain my own thoughts. I felt absolved of all my sins, cleansed, and not the same human being I was before. I also had access to all of my memory from the time I was born to that moment. I could call up anything, see anything that I ever experienced, or in the company of anything I ever experienced. I could access knowledge beyond my own states, and I was in a place that was just not the same human being that I had been prior to that. And that opened up my eyes, literally, in multiple ways, and it put me on the path of discovery, and eventually I found the purpose for that experience, which was for me to teach other people to have experiences of transformation and higher consciousness.
That's an amazing story that perhaps not a lot of us on the line can relate with fully, but maybe some can. I would love to have an experience like that, and it's just amazing that you are actually reaching back and helping us to transcend.
The beauty of it is, Julie, is that I didn't do anything to get it. I mean, I wasn't self-helping. I wasn't reading self-help books. I wasn't a disciple of any guru. I wasn't involved in any of these processes that are so prevalent today about people going through their enlightenment. It just zapped me out of nowhere. So it was really a state of grace.
And it was a literal instantaneous awakening.
Yeah, it was a gift by the universe, and it said, "Wake up, buddy. Your turn. You've been taking it for 30 years. Now it's your time to give it for 30 years."
Very good, very good. Well, thank you for giving it, because it just sounds incredible what I've learned about your alignment factor and the laws of being. Where would you like to start?
Well, I guess if we're going to talk about, we can talk about awakening, we can talk about being, whatever is your point of clarity that you'd like to make, Julie. But, if I were to start, first thing that I'd want to do is sort of define what being awake is, and then we could move into the foundation of what we have to know to become awake and how we process our experience to move into that place. So does that sound like a good structure for what we're going into?
It sounds perfect. Yep.
Okay, so, the first understanding, if we were to define awakening, is the complete engagement of our high sensory perception. And it's a beingness in the present moment, really using these gifts that we are given as human beings. Awake is really a state of mind that has united the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious into one state, which we now call the supraconsciousness, S-U-P-R-A, supraconsciousness, where that process is greater. It's a synergy of the alignment of our conscious, our subconscious, and our superconscious to be more than each of those independent entities that exist within us and make decisions for us. The supraconsciousness is really the greater than the higher self place, because we have access to everything that has ever existed within us. We become masters of ourselves, we become masters of our world, and we become masters of energy. And everything within us is then congruent. Thus, we're using and enjoying the mind, body, and spirit without reservation or effort. And it's a state, or really it's a dance is a better word to say. It's a dance with the universe. And in order to get there, what most of us have to do, or what most of us have to begin to encounter, is to deal with two questions, which are the age-old questions of enlightenment, which are, who am I and what am I feeling right now? Not in the future, not 5 minutes from now, not in the past 15 minutes, whatever. Who am I and what am I feeling right at this instance? Because there's only the now. There's no future or past. We're just moving moment to moment and creating as we go, and that's really the state of enlightenment. And in order to have it, we have to have a strong nervous system. We have to have clarity of really mental focus, and then we have to have a spiritual connection at higher levels of just source and appreciation and gratitude. So that's what comprises the awakening state. The benefits are endless, and we'll start to go into that, but what we're talking about here really is that there's a state of being that exists that many of us would like to get to, which we call the awakened state, really. And that's looking to become to live in a state of abundance and where we can express abundance and effortlessness in everything that we do, and that we can experience whatever we would like, including finances and relationships and health, and that we're having now and are intricately related to who we are in the now and before. And what we notice as we begin to elevate ourselves or walk through this place of consciousness, and by the way, consciousness and life have an equal sign between them, and awareness, they're the same things. There is no difference. When we've seen when we get to this place where we want to create this new lifestyle, this new state of being, it follows that in order to have a radically new lifestyle or to become awakened, it clearly follows that we would require a radically new state of being. So let's start by getting into this state of being, and that's the first place that I think that most of us want to take a look at. So in order to become masters of ourselves and masters of our world, really, all things are really, we have to understand that all things are really expressions of energy. And a skilled master at effortlessly working on energy within and without is a place in accordance with the laws of the universe. So what masters do is that they live in a state of inspired transformation. In other words, they're changing continuously, and they are being inspired as they go moment by moment. So what we want to do here for the people who are on this line and listening is to realize a couple of major ideas. One is that, and they're truths, they're enlightenments, and we're about to get on the path of the mastery of energy for at least for the moment. and how we effortlessly achieve our desires and know ourselves. So the place of inspired transformation, the place where we go to transform, in other words, to change the energy levels of who we are and what we are so that we can become bigger and better and stronger and more magnificent versions of ourselves, need a couple of different things. They need to understand, they need to engage a strong nervous system, as I said. They need to engage this mental focus, and they need to engage spiritual clarity. And we have to find out in the process of becoming awake, and this is what I help people do really, is to learn what we're made of and who we really are. The question is not who am I, the question is who am I really? Okay, so there's a lot of answers to the question of who am I, but there's a deeper part to that, and that's who am I really? And then we have to then begin to understand and study, what the world is made of, how it arises, what it's for, because those are significant understandings that help us navigate through our lives. And in the course of all that, we get this amazing sense of power and involvement in the world. And this amazing sense stays with us forever. Once we've shifted our perception into a place of dealing with these things and shifting the perception to a higher perspective, meaning a higher vibration, a higher energy, we start to begin to see what the world really is made of and how it arises and from what it arises from. And as we know from quantum physics, it arises from this formless place that is controlled by our consciousness. And then what it's for, what do we use it for? Why are we here on this earth? So those are major questions that we have to answer in our lifetime, and these are the questions that are gateways into our enlightenment or our awakening or our beingness, if you will, and how all this fits together. And then one step further in the teaching of all this is that how we can use this information and process them into usable skills that allow us to create our world the way we desire it, as all people would like to. And that's a universal state, and basically that's what I teach. So how does that sound for a start?
It sounds very profound. And because our listeners are here to experience what you're saying, to better integrate your words, I'm just curious because I'm actually reading one of the testimonials from a really enthusiastic woman named Emily saying, "Words cannot describe the elevation in vibration that I tuned into during your class. The momentum we were all tuned into was nothing short of miraculous." Do you happen to have a brief little exercise that you could lead us through right now to give us a glimpse of that?
An exercise of higher elevation?
Or any sort of exercise that you can think of that would be beneficial at this point in our talk.
Well, as we take a look at things from a higher perspective, what I do really is I move people through what I call the I am principles. Mm-hmm. And the I am principles is the knowledge of the two most powerful words on the planet, which are the words I am. And the knowledge of that is that what you attach the words I am are the signal to the universe to take that attachment out to the universe, out to completion. So when you say I am, which are the words that were originally spoken to any person who has ever been in contact with God and asked him about himself, his answer is always the same: I am that I am. And the I am is the unified field. For most people who understand a little bit about the process of unification, or the unified field, rather, the I am is the place where we reside at the subatomic level. It is the place where of our beingness, which means there was nothing before us, there's nothing after that, and there's only the moment, and that beingness is in the present. So what you attach to the words I am are the signal to the universe of your unit of consciousness stating an identity that then must carry out, so you are your unit of consciousness in the whole, or in the oneness of all things. And in the oneness of all things, we are limited to nothing because there's a system of only one. And the system of only one is what moves everything for us to experience in this human container, whatever it is our thoughts are, and our being is there to, has decided to come to this planet to experience, so that we can experience our own magnificence and God can experience his own through the process of who we are. So to summarize, really, we're really looking at a field of energy that is an infinite potential field. And that field is a place, it's a dominant state of being. It has no definition until acted on by our consciousness. So, and consciousness is simply the awareness of self, the I am awareness, okay? Mm-hmm. And whenever any intelligent life form directs a thought, a word, or an action at the unified field of infinite possibilities, really it's instantly activated and takes on the form of whatever is projected into it. So you can take a little test of, the fact that you have access to this unified field and can do anything you want with it. So in order to get into a higher consciousness, you simply have to end your resistance to the higher consciousness. And all you have to say is, I am free, or I am free of whatever it is you want to be. Okay, so in the field of infinite potential, it's limitless. It can't run out. I mean, it's from the same field that the smallest particles to the largest universes are created. So we're really in a place of creation. So when you want to create anything, regardless of what it is, let's just say, and even if you don't have a design or intention for it, and you don't really even need an intention for a lot of things, when you have a thought that flashes on the screen of your mind, and you notice what we call a synchronicity, that thought appears in your reality in some form, you have created something. It is the place of higher consciousness from that place. Now, let's just say, and that's your higher self connecting with the unified field. So let's just say yesterday you thought of a movie that was kind of interesting to you and you chuckled to yourself, and then the next day, this has all happened to all of us, the next day it appears on television, and you go, wow, that's a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. It's a place of your creation because you had no resistance to it, and so it showed up instantaneously. It showed up in the fastest, most productive, most significant way for you. And now, it may not seem like much, it may seem like a coincidence, but it is the place from which we create. It is the vortex at that space that allows us to create. The laws of creation are complete and they're always the same, but what happens is that the more we notice how we create, or from this higher place, the more we notice that what we think becomes a reality, the greater becomes our ability to exercise what we think. And the whole process, really, Julie, is to play. I mean, as you play and you have thoughts that show up in your reality, as you notice that you can trace reality back to thoughts that you've had before, it becomes a very enlightening experience. You become to see and feel, the creatorship that you are. You enjoy yourself, and you start to experiment with this. You start to experiment with these methods. And the best effects at doing creation work, maintaining your desires. Desires always come when you play like a child, when you're a child, when you're playful, when you're imaginative, when you're spontaneous, when you're creative. The whole idea is to relax into this place of enlightenment. It's not a matter of gritting down, bearing down, and being effortful. It's a matter of play. It's a matter of being a child again. So the thing is not to get anxious or frigid or rigid about this, and the thing is to get to a place where it's easy to notice more, The Enlightenment is about observation. It's about a beingness that has no judgment and allowing all things to exist simultaneously. So without any interference, without any subconscious or conscious involvement in what is being presented in front of you at any given time. So consciousness is really being awake to and knowing that we are. It's the I am, or that's consciousness. Consciousness is the ability to consciously know you are experiencing something. You need consciousness to feel your experience. Without it, you can't feel anything, and you can't know who you are. So this is the path of evolution, rising consciousness, and that's the game we all play. Becoming more aware and more of our infinite selves, and that's growth, and that's our soul work. And it's the seat of consciousness is the heart, and basically consciousness is about feeling. How do we feel right now? Feelings and emotion are the processing of experience. So anytime you want to take an exercise, just go in to say, what am I feeling right now? And when you decide to create a state of being, a state of happiness and joy, notice that you are in that place. I am happy. Now notice that very shortly thereafter, you're going to be experiencing a higher state of elevation, a higher state of happiness. Notice that when you say, I am a great mother, a great salesperson, a great teacher, whatever the case may be, you begin to experience that. Notice that when you say, I am broke, I am depressed, I am in difficult circumstances, that you are already experiencing that. So the I am is the place of your, the creation of your reality. And the mind is simply a tool to create those experiences, and the most potent tool you can use are the I ams. So what you create with your I ams. We can talk a little bit about more about that if this is going in the direction that you are asking me about.
Oh, absolutely. It's all a part of it, and there's a lot to cover in just an hour. And maybe we can come back to that, or you'll know of the best way to tie it back in. But on these calls, we get so many responses and questions from the listeners who are asking about, I've lost my job and struggling financially. What about the recession? And they're living in fear and struggle. What can you share with us to provide some relief for them?
That's a very common experience for a lot of people, yes. So, the first thing that I tell them when I get that question, and Julie, I get it all the time, continuously and all the time, is the first thing is that not to separate your finances or your circumstances from the rest of your life. So if you're happy and you're not experiencing financial abundance, it's because you have thought somewhere deep inside of you that you are not financially abundant. You have given yourself to not being financially abundant. Now, you may say, that's not the case. I always do things that move me in that direction. Well, check a little deeper. It's not the case. We experience exactly what we think. We experience exactly what we call our state of being. Our I am is really the sense of what creates our self-image, and it sponsors everything we think. So once we have an I am about, being financially abundant or being broke, we're going to experience that because that's our self-image, and we can't outperform our self-image. All we can ever do is create bigger and better versions of ourselves. We can't be wrong. All we can do is grow. But what we're doing is once we separated finances from the rest of our life, that separation is going to continue, and we're going to get more of that. So the idea is to create a version of yourself, or an I am, with a version, an image and a thought, because our lives are really the thoughts and images of our minds projected into reality to the exact extent that we believe them. So once we get an image of ourselves as a bigger, more financially abundant person, we start to make those conditions form around ourselves. It is universal law that what you think, what you energize, what you focus your attention on grows. So if you're focusing your attention on not having, not being financially abundant, but being happy, you're going to get not financially abundant. You're going to get more of that continuously as long as you're looking at it that way. The idea is to change your state of mind or your state of being to the place where you are financially abundant. You can't be wealthy. I mean, you can by effort. You can become wealthy by effort or by manipulation, but you can't be happily wealthy without it first being an internal state of yours. So wealth is not about external money. It's about internal feeling of constant and full and wonderful abundance. So once you begin to see yourself internally as wealthy, regardless of what your external circumstances say, your brain frequencies then begin to affect your level of consciousness. Those words, I am wealth, I am joy, I am abundant, begin to activate certain brain frequencies or levels of consciousness and so on, and then it works into a place where those frequencies start to go out into the universe, prompted by your higher self, and to go out and bring you the experiences of wealth, to bring you the information, bring you the tools, bring you the people, bring you the connections that help get you there. But it's not before you're internally wealthy that you can become externally wealthy. You can do it by manipulation or effort, but that's the hard way, and it's incredibly stressful. The easy way is to just become it, which is not anything but a decision. I am wealth. And then don't go back and start to think about it. Just move from that decision, act as if, think as if, be as if you are already wealthy. Don't at that point no longer try, and here's the secret, you no longer try to determine that state, you try to experience it. So from that point on, when you decide you're internally wealthy, now your only thought should be about the experience of being wealthy. What do I want to spend my money on? What do I want to do? What is a wealth experience for me, et cetera, et cetera. Not how do I get more money, how do I move this thing in this direction or this thing in that direction. It's about beingness, which is everything, because in your beingness you are all that exists. Does that help?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, it rings so true, and it's so simple, yet eludes most of us when we're caught up in just reacting through our days. So there was one other thing that I've heard you touch on about choosing love over fear and certainty over doubt, and the impact on our lives as well as on the planet. Would you mind expanding on that?
Yes. Fear doesn't really exist. It's always an illusion. There's no such thing as a state of fear. It's something that we give energy that separates us from our oneness or our beingness or our ability to be in a state of love. Okay, there is only love. Everything is love. The universe, God, and love are the same thing. They're really an equal sign between them. And love is the combination. It's a tangible aspect, a building block of everything in the universe. And everything is moved by it. Everything was created by it. Everything is moved by it. And everything is it in a form or other. Some have less love and some have more love, but it's all love, even in a state of fear, even in a state of distress, even in a state of, mental disarray, complete discord, and so on and so forth. Fear is the acronym, stands for the acronym of false evidence appearing real. And, what fear really is a misperception. All fear or all suffering is really an error in our thinking. And that is a misperception of a non-truth that we believe to be a truth. So we accept it, we energize it, and then it becomes our reality if we do that. If we realize that fear is an illusion, we simply move or love into it or lean into it with love and say, I accept this in one form or another, just by your feeling of loving into it. As you accept it, you allow it to go through you and pass without any damage, without any hurt, without any disappointment, frustration, so on and so forth. Love is the answer to all things, and it is what we do ultimately in this game of life. It is every place that we grow into is a greater unfolding of unconditional love. And what we want to get to is pure unconditional love, which is the pure state of bliss and joy and connection with spirit. To be connected with our spirit, to be not to be connected, to be our spirit existent on this planet. That's that whole Jesus thing of I am in this world but not of it. So the place of love is the place in which we allow and accept all things to exist as they are without interference whatsoever, so that it can be who it is and we can be who we are in our own magnificent glory. And each one of us is in magnificent glory. It doesn't matter. We're all radiant lights, just some are moving faster than others. So the place of fear, the other thing that I think people need to know about fear is the core of fear, and when we encounter it, whether it's a wave through your body or an experience you don't want to have or a resistance or a denial, is the concept that you can't handle what's in front of you. That is what fear is. It is the subconscious reaction to the fact that you may not be able to handle what is presented to you or what you're anticipating. So that's what fear is. But know that everything that happens, there's no such thing as external assertion, so everything that happens to you is created from the inside out first. And so when something like fear comes into your experience, you've created it just as you've created every other experience in your life. And that may sound harsh to some people, but it's absolutely true. And the thought that you can't handle it really is a thought that keeps you from going through it and pulling your courage together. But the truth of the matter is, because you created it, you're bigger than it. You are bigger than any fear that you will ever experience. You are more amazing in every way than anything fear can produce. And fear only wants to protect you. Really, it's a mechanism that was there to protect you. But it's a cluster of beliefs that you have come to put energy into because of past experiences that you thought would harm you or whatever the case may be in some form or other that you couldn't handle. but just knowing that you can handle it means you can just go through it. And that pulling that courage together to know that you're bigger than it is all that it takes. And once the fear, which is darkness about something or misperception of something, is brought into the light of truth, it dissolves, and then you have gone through it, and it no longer bothers you ever again. So it's not about technique. It's just about this knowing, this understanding that you are greater than the experience that you are going through. That you created the experiences, thus you are the progenitor of everything that's happening, and so you can just as easily uncreate it or create a different experience and just switch it away from that. Mm-hmm. Now, doubt and certainty. Okay, when we build a house, we have to know what it takes to build a house in order to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So what we find in the process of building ourselves to become masters of ourselves, masters of energies, and masters of our world is that it takes a certain understanding, it takes a certain knowledge of the blueprint in order to make the house stand and be real and to come into the physical world. The same thing happens internally. So, and when we build an engine, when we take a perspective to this awakening, to this beingness, and we expand ourselves to the place of where we now have a perspective as well as a perception on how things work, we get into this place of knowing, which is greater than a place of belief. And this place of knowing, the belief is having to get someplace. Okay, it's really it's a belief. It is a expression of thinking something is true, whether you have evidence for it or not. The place of knowing is beyond the state of belief, and the place of knowing is the fuel that drives all of us. We can't do anything without some form of certainty. We can't be happy without being certain that we're happy. We can't be effective without knowing that we're effective. We can't be wealthy without knowing that we're wealthy. We have to have this place of certainty, and this certainty is the fuel that drives the engine that we put together here in this process of understanding the quantum field, or another way to say that is how spirit moves everything. Okay, so once we understand how spirit moves everything, we then have this place of knowing, and that place of certainty is something that I teach very, very strongly. I teach you how to have it in gobs. The place of doubt is what keeps us from having anything, doing anything, or being anything. It's this not knowing, this egging feeling inside of us that we can't quite make a decision, which is really what doubt is about, that we can't quite make a decision whether the universe is for us or against us, whether the universe is a hostile place or a friendly place. Those are the things that keep us from being the best we can be in the most effortless, smooth, easy play way that we can get there. Okay, but certainty, once we know, we don't have to believe anymore because we know how things work. If you know how something works, you don't have to believe it because the place of belief has already been transcended. So does that help there?
Yes, absolutely. It all makes cognitive sense in my mind. I think all of us want the connection and the joy and the bliss and the knowing that you're talking about. So in the process of us co-creating this call together, is there something that you feel right now would be the most important thing for our listeners to experience and that you might be able to lead us through?
Let's talk about being, for example, for a quick moment, and then I'll give you a small exercise so that it can be integrated cellularly, okay?
Thank you.
All right, so being is a state of mind, such as being happy. You can't explain a state, nor can you do a state. You can only be a state. You can't do happiness. You can only be happy or be happiness. Creation works this way. Being causes thinking, which causes speaking, which causes doing, which puts in place the system to receive and experience what you created in your being and thinking. So being is the first cause of everything. And being is what causes thinking, so that when we're happy, we're really thinking happy thoughts. Thoughts spring from our being, if you will. So in other words, thoughts are sponsored by being. And in fact, nothing happens without being, so, conditions occur because of our state of being and not the other way around. The way that the world works is that the physical follows the spiritual, not the other way around. So when we think something, we have first created it in our mind, and then it goes into the physical reality. The physical reality is totally separate, and it's secondary to what we have thought. So happy conditions don't make us happy. It's being happy that causes happy conditions. unhappy conditions only show up to prove our pre-existing state of unhappiness. So the first step to experiencing anything like massive wealth, if you will, is being wealthy internally. Okay? Being wealthy is an internal state. It doesn't have anything to do with the outside world. The internal state of wealth is a decision we make right now, not in 5 minutes from now, not in the future, not an hour from now. We become it right now. And we don't need anything outside of ourselves to make this decision. So once we make this decision to be wealthy, we become wealth. And I know this is hard to speak of, but it's already done. And we only have to then keep our attention on it in order for it to manifest into the physical world. So, I mean, it's hard to speak of this because we can only be a state. We can't do a state. We can't even speak a state. But we can clearly see how being works and how that wealth is. So what I'm going to ask you to do as an experiential state is to then now set up a series of I Ms, because you know that the I Ms are the trigger mechanism that create your reality. They are the trigger mechanisms. They are the identity of your unit of consciousness with Source. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to set up a state of, let's just say, or set up a series of I Ms to make the grandest versions of yourself. I am a successful business person. I am a magnificent mother. I am a phenomenal golfer. I am a phenomenal a communicator, et cetera, et cetera. So set up like 20 or 40 I Ms, and in the morning, every morning, and every evening before you go to sleep, read your I Ms. And, you don't have to believe a word I say. Within 15 to 20 days, watch what starts happening in your life. So just go through that process. Now, in order to make sure that these have even more potency, one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is to just contemplate or meditate on some of the things that we've talked about today. And once we start to talk about that, once we start to ruminate these things in our mind, the understanding of the foundation of how we create things, I mean, what the world is made of, who we really are, how the world arises, and so on. Most of you have some rudimentary understanding of quantum physics, and how it all fits together. Start to contemplate on these things, and as you do that contemplation, I'd like you to take a 10-minute walk, either before, after, or during, and then raise your right hand and your left knee at the same time when you're done walking. Okay, and then raise your left knee and your left hand and your right knee 4 times with your eyes closed, 4 times with your eyes open. So 4 times equally. 4 times right knee, left hand, 4 times right hand, left knee, and simultaneously at the same time. And then what happens is that starts to integrate or internalize or cellularly activate the bridge between your linear, your logical left brain, and your intuitive right brain. It activates that process to unite the two halves of your brain. It is one of the ways that babies integrate information, by going across the corpus callosum of the brain, which is that dent or that valley between the two halves of the brain, and it sends electrical impulses into both areas of the brain to take the same information in congruence. Okay, so that situation begins to then elevate us, because we now start to get both halves of our brain activated, rather than just the right side or the left side of our brain. And that activation becomes something that we simply express in joy. So the next thing that I ask you to do is to just contemplate these things in a place of dance or music or fun or whatever. Play with it. That's what's going to activate your cellular experience of raising your consciousness, because nobody can vibrate for us. Nobody can raise or lower our consciousness but us. And as we understand that, the way we raise our consciousness is we reach inside of ourselves for eagerness or excitement or joy or love. And by doing that and keeping that, getting that into a habit, we become much, much greater human beings, and the I Ms that we have create bigger and better versions of ourselves. We start to see ourselves in confident ways, in self-esteem ways, in communicative, extraordinary ways, and so on and so forth. So as we start to do that, we start to notice what we feel. And every time we notice what we feel, we are really tapping into the energy of who we really are, the place of enlightenment. Okay, so we stay in these states of who am I really, or discovering who am I really, which is a moment-by-moment experience, and what am I feeling right now, we start to vibrate. And as we raise our right hand, left knee 4 times with our eyes open, and left hand, right knee 4 times with our eyes open, we start to neurally create the pathways across our brain that help to integrate and internalize that cellular experience. Does that help, Julie?
Yes, it does. I wish we all had time to do that right now while you're on the call and walk us through all that. I'm going to have to re-listen to this and write it down and do it, because that's very, very interesting to me. And you know,
very
there's just
profound exercise. Watch what happens after you do it for 15 days. Don't even believe a word I say. Just do it for a while.
I would love that, and if any of our listeners can do this and send us your feedback, that would be phenomenal. I just have to say, Harrison, I am completely flabbergasted at the number of exuberant testimonials that I have heard and read and seen about your programs. I mean, I've just got to read one of these, if you don't mind. And then perhaps what we'll do is I'll let our listeners know a bit more about a program and a really special offer that you are providing to us today. But this person named John Mosier says, "Wow, I recently finished listening to the audio recordings, and wow, I have tried and participated in many self-development and personal growth programs and seminars. None of them, in fact, all of them combined, fall short in the transformation I experienced from your program. I could physically feel my vibration, awareness, and clarity rise instantly. I found your program easy to understand, raw, real, and juicy."
Can I also give you a couple of examples of success stories I have?
Please do, yes.
All right, I want to give you 2 quick examples. One is of a person who is a world-class sculptor who had fallen in his thoughts and fallen in his ability to recognize his own magnificence. And he was on the brink of losing a marriage. He was on the brink of not being able to pay. He was on the brink of being broke, not being able to pay for his child's education. And where he lives, it's mandatory to have a private education for your child. And the cost of where he lives is extraordinarily expensive. And he's a sculptor, so it takes a lot of money to keep these studios going. And he sculpts in bronze, which is even more expensive. So he was on the brink of financial ruin. He was on the brink of a lost marriage, and he was sinking. And when he went through 14 weeks of a course with me, he recently, because of the ability to understand and integrate the information that we were going over in my classes, he recently received a check for $250,000. He then has now opened up, since leaving my class, he has now opened up a gallery of his own, sold multiple pieces, been involved in 14 to 18 different shows across the U.S., and I think also across the world. I'm not sure yet, but I believe also certainly across the U.S., of people who want to deal with his work. All of that is a result of changing his thinking, changing his state of being, elevating his state of consciousness, and understanding his I ams to the place of awakening. That's just one guy. So he got it, and he is now also in the process of creating a show and you guys can also creating a show of his sculptures, which are neoclassical, and I actually will be going on a trip with him and taking people with us in August. So he has created this new state of being, this new state of consciousness and awareness, in which he is now abundant, in which he is now happy, in which he is now successful in every way, shape, and form, and he is generating all the effects of those states of being. All that comes from working with the I Am principles and understanding the processes in which I teach. Another success story that I had for people who are involved in the healing professions, or people who are physically attuned and wanting to make changes in their lives, is there was a woman who was confined to a hospital bed for 2 years because doctors had given her medication that ruptured the tendons in her lower body, not knowing that she was both diabetic they knew that she was diabetic, but not knowing that she was allergic to the medication. And also, later it came out that the medication was also defective and had ruptured all the lower tendons in her body. So she was horizontal and in a hospital bed for 2 years. very suicidal, very unhappy, gone through her entire savings and fortune. And when she heard my voice on a teleseminar, she got in contact with me. We started to work with her, and in the process of working with her, within a few weeks afterwards, the other thing that was involved in her life was that the doctors had converged on her, and because of her diabeticness and because of these tendons being broken, she had come to the point of where the doctors told her she had to have one of her legs amputated. She was in that bad a state, and she was in constant and continuous and magnificent, incredible amounts of fear. And so when she contacted me, we started to work together. The first thing we did was we took the decision out of the hands of the doctors and put it back into her empowerment to decide that she didn't want to have her legs amputated. We took the fear out of the process, so now it wasn't something that she was thinking about constantly and expanding into energy that would, manifest into the real world. We started to work with each other in a place that was an I am place to begin to see her own beauty, her own magnificence, her own internal, enlightened self. And as we began to do that, within a few weeks after that, she was not only sitting up, which the doctors said she would never be able to do. She was in a wheelchair, which the doctors then said was a miracle. They said she would never walk again. And within a few weeks after that, she was walking. Not quite as good as you or me. She walks with a walker, but she was walking. After 2 years in a hospital bed, being suicidal, and having them tell her that her leg needed to be amputated, she is now as normal as you or I in most ways. So she also, prior to our having connected with each other, never made more than $2,000 a month in her life. And after having worked with me for a while, she was starting to make $15,000, $20,000 a month in her practice, in her healing practice. So those are just a couple of the stories, and they are somewhat. Those are large success stories, but the success of people I work with and through the information and through the processes I provide really have caused miraculous results. And these are just a couple of the miracles that have gone on. Another one is that one of my students was working, totally brilliant student, was working as a head of a hospital and also head of a university research department, and in the process of working with me over the course of a couple of years, this year $40 million was added to the bottom line of her department, and she attributes that to the things that she learned from me. So those are just a couple of the success stories of what I do and what I've helped people activate within themselves, or they've activated it themselves, but I've helped them to get there.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and I'm excited to learn so much more. And for our listeners, if you folks are ready to be and experience this higher consciousness, I'll encourage you to check out his special offer. So if you're streaming in on your computer, you can click on Harrison's special offer button on your screen. And if you're listening by phone, you can go to the special offer link that we've made, which is www.awakeningwiththemasters.com/laws of being. That's LAWSOFBEING, laws of being. Would you please describe what we'll find at this link?
I believe we're giving you 6 modules from the alignment course that I've been teaching or that I have taught regarding the awakening process, regarding the being process, designed to align the conscious, the superconscious, and the subconscious into a place of congruency so that now the energy can flow smoothly and the things that you desire in your life can happen. So these are 6 modules described on that particular page. Each one is designed to subsequently build on the other so that we get a massive and deep understanding of this process of becoming more, this process of getting grander versions of ourselves, of expanding the presence of who we are in the world, and to finally end up in abundance and happiness, abundance being the kind of abundance we've just been talking about, and happiness being in a state where you're in a constant state of well-being. I mean, you may go up and down for a short amount of time, but you always come back to a constant state of well-being and pleasure and experiencing life as a pleasant, supportive thing. And in that, in this course, basically, I've given you 6 modules here, all designed to take you into instantaneous transformation. And the one thing that separates me from all the other teachers out there is that I believe transformation is completely instantaneous. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to exercise. You don't have to do any exercises. You don't have to go step by step. To me, all that stuff is marketing. All that stuff is marketing fluff. And by the time you're going through some of these principles step by step with a lot of people, basically you've forgotten the first one. You've gone through step 6 and you've forgotten the first one, and now you get confused. This is not about confusion. It's simple. It's clear. It's instantaneous. There is not a process that you have to go from place to place. When you declare your I amness, you are instantaneously moved into that place. It's not something you have to get to. It's something you are. And in this world, we get what we are and not what we want. So once we become the things we want, be the change you want in the world, once we become what we decide, then the rest of the universe must follow suit. So that's what this course is designed to teach you in a very short order.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's a course, so go ahead.
Yes. Well, I've taken a peek at it, and I've listened to a little bit of it, and I can't wait to get back to it because it's just so much for us to experience. And I understand that you've never sold this particular class for less than $997, and you're allowing us to have it for about a tenth of that price. So thank you so much for making it available to more of our listeners to experience as well.
Yeah, I'm giving it to you guys only because Lance twisted my arm.
Yes. Well, he is a huge proponent of yours. In fact, he said, these are his words, he said, "This stuff is so simple, everyone should be using it. I paid over $1,000 for my course several years ago, and I didn't have the money to pay for it. I hope that people can realize the gift they are being given." So thank you.
Awesome.
And once again, if you missed Harrison's special link, it is www.awakeningwiththemasters.com/laws of being. And you know what? We've got about a minute or 2 or 3 left to wrap this up. So Harrison, what would be one last thing you would like to leave our listeners with that'll really stick with them and make a difference in their lives?
In order to become more, the best thing you can do is play with your life. Just play. Just have fun, because as we have fun, we're on this earth to do 2 things: to expand and to be happy. That's it. How we do that is our choice, but those are the 2 reasons those are the 2 functions we have as human beings. We create experience, and that experience is all geared toward expansion and happiness. So just play. Dance with what's presented. Have a good time. Know that the universe has your back. Have fun. That's what I want to leave you with. Also know that wherever you raise your consciousness, the object is always to pay it forward to other people.
As you have done tonight. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Harrison.
I appreciate you. I appreciate Lance. Thanks, Julie. You guys out there have a great experience, and until we meet again, I hope to at some point get a chance to meet each and every one of you, because we are truly friends. We wouldn't be on this call together if we weren't.
Very good. Thank you. And also thank you to our Awakening community for participating in this series. Your awakening has the power to uplift the entire planet, so let's keep it going. Feel free to spread the word and keep checking your emails or your call calendar about all of the upcoming calls. And good night, Harrison, and good night, everyone.
Good night, Julie. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.